Good morning, everybody. It's 9 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get the meeting started. Welcome to the July 22nd, 2019 Planning Commission meeting. Recommendations from the Planning Commission on the items from this agenda will be considered by the Board of Commissioners at their regular meeting on August 6th, 2019 at 10:30 a.m. I would note that agendas are on the back, in the back bookshelf right there if you haven't already received one. Further, the Planning Commission now utilizes speaker request forms. So if you would like to speak on any of the items on the agenda, please complete the speaker request form located on the table in the back, the commission chambers, and return it to the planning staff located at the lower right-hand side of the dais right over here. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Roll call. Looks like that we're all here except for Travis. Okay. Item number 1, approval of the July 8th, 2019 minutes. Does anybody have any changes or corrections to the minutes? If none, I would entertain a motion for approval.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion carries. Item number 2, approval of the agenda. We have consent items 3 through 16 and regular items 17 through 27. Are there any changes to the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion carries. What's that?
Need a motion to approve.
Did I miss that? Yeah. All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Sorry.
I second.
Was there,
Yeah, I moved.
He moved and I seconded.
All right.
Approval of the agenda.
thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Now that brings us to item number 3.
All right. Good morning, Commissioners. PJ Conover, Director of Planning Department. We're on the consent agenda. The following items have been placed on the consent agenda for action to be taken on all items in accordance with staff's recommendation by a single vote. Any item may be removed from the consent agenda by any planning commissioner, staff member, or audience member for separate consideration. The findings of this planning commission are recommendations to the Pennington County Board of Commissioners, who will make a final decision. Item 3, conditional use permit review 1122 for Jeff Zadargaski to review a home occupation, detailing and refurbishing of small engine equipment and motorcycles in a detached garage in the Suburban Residential District. Staff recommends to continue the review of conditional use permit 1122 to no later than the September 9, 2019 Planning Commission meeting in order for staff to contact the new landowner. Item 4, conditional use permit review 0711 for Bernard Ness. Ronnie Ness is the agent to review an auto repair business in the general agriculture district. Staff recommends to end conditional use permit 0711 per the applicant's request. Item 5, conditional use permit review 1102 for Jeff Devaney to review an internally illuminated on-premise sign within 1,500 feet of a residential zoning district or dwelling unit in a highway service district. Staff recommends approval of the extension of conditional use permit 1102 with 9 conditions. Item 6, conditional use permit review 1725 for Donald Wyakowski. Lisa Lorzell is the agent to review 1 pole barn and 3 greenhouse structures in a suburban residential district, 1 pole barn structure in a suburban residential district, and another pole barn structure that will remain in the principal structure and be removed from the property in the future. This is all located in the suburban residential district. Staff recommends approval of the extension of conditional use permit 1725 with 8 conditions. Item 7, conditional use permit review 1819 for Greg Bolt to review a guest house on a subject property in a low-density residential district. Staff recommends approval of the extension of conditional use permit 1819 with 9 conditions. Item 8, conditional use permit review 1822 for Hayyard Hills LLC. Rodney Souther is the agent to review an existing single-family residence to be used as a vacation home rental on the subject property in a low-density residential district. Staff recommends approval of the extension of conditional use permit 1822 with 15 conditions. Item 9, conditional use permit review 1822 for Plainsview Mobile Manor Christine Forrest is the agent to review an existing mobile home park, Plainsview Mobile Home Manor, in a suburban residential district. Staff recommends approval of the extension of conditional use permit 1824 with 21 conditions. Item 10, conditional use permit 1901 for NMMC Incorporated. Terry Saylor is the agent to allow for a vacation home rental on a subject property in a low-density residential district. Staff recommends to continue conditional use permit 1901 to the September 23rd, 2019 Planning Commission meeting with 2 conditions. Item 11, layout plat LPL 1915 for Terry and Marcy Graber to create 3 new parcels in accordance with section 400.1 of the Pennington County Subdivision Regulations. Staff recommends to end layout plat LPL 1915 per the applicant's request. Item 12, construction permit review 1608 for Highmark Incorporated to review the removal of existing surfacing and the installation of a 33-foot sanitary sewer along the center line of the existing roadway and reconstructing the roadway without asphalt surfacing. Staff recommends to end construction permit 1608. Item 13, construction permit review 1609 for Lazy P 6th Land Company Incorporated. Orville Davis is the agent to review the continuing work initiated under construction permit 1305, 1402, and 1514. Reclamation of hay pasture west of 5th Street and to continue stockpiles of off-site soil material for future use on site. There's also miscellaneous channeling maintenance, removal of debris, and sediment. Staff recommends approval of the extension of construction permit 1609 with 9 conditions. Item 14, construction permit review 1710 for Site Work Specialist Incorporated to review the excavating and stockpiling of material for off-site use for South Valley Drive property. Staff will be recommending to continue the review of construction permit 1710 to the September 9th, 2019 Planning Commission meeting. Item 15, construction permit review 1808 for Heavy Constructors to review the excavation and grading of land to install 8-inch and 12-inch water mains and water service installation. Staff recommends to end construction permit 1808. And the final item on consent, item 16, construction permit review 1813 for James and Adam Taylor to review the construction of a road to access the future residents in accordance with sections 208 and 507 in Pennington County zoning ordinance. Staff recommends to end construction permit 1813.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any items that the Planning Commission would like removed from the consent agenda? Seeing none, any items that staff would like pulled?
No, sir.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
did you ask if we wanted to pull any?
Yes.
Okay, I missed that, sorry. I'd like number 9 for separate discussion.
Okay. And for the audience's information, the consent agenda, we will vote on all of these items at one time, and that will include 3 through 8 and 10 through 16. Considering our speaker request forms are somewhat of a new thing, are there any of the items in the consent agenda that anyone would like pulled from the agenda for separate consideration? All right. Seeing none, I would help me out here, PJ. Do we vote through
Sure.
all of the consent agenda items first, and then we take item 9, correct?
Correct.
So I would entertain a motion for approval of items 3 through 8 and 10 through 16 of the consent agenda.
I so move.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Brings us to item number 9.
Okay, in my, when we saw this a year ago and approved the conditional use permit, I recall some discussion about the condition 15, that the lot numbers be posted and with the same type and style of lot number and so on and so on. And there was some discussion about whether that was an onerous requirement, and it was determined that we thought it wouldn't be and we should do it. So I was just curious if that's been done. And when you did the site inspection on the 16th, a week or so ago, if that had been done.
I didn't personally do the site inspection,
Yeah.
and I didn't hear anything from Cassie, who did the site inspection, who's unavailable right now to come down, of whether they've all been put up. We've actually been working with the agents on that property, and they've done a considerable amount of work improving it. But your specific question, I don't know the answer to.
Okay. So then the complaint that was received regarding the internal road system, what was the nature of that? What was the concern of the roads?
I think the poor quality and the width of the roads.
Okay, and so that the additional language to 17, that they be continually surfaced and maintained in a dust-free manner, you think addresses those concerns? I mean, this doesn't address width of the roads.
It doesn't address the width, but there's not much you can do with the roads. The complaints come in that it is tight, but because of the existing mobile homes, there's not much they can do with the width.
I see, okay, all right. Very good. Yeah, and just as a point of curiosity, I'd just like maybe when Cassie, just,
Yep.
you can ask her about that, just
Absolutely.
about the numbers, just because I'd like to find out if indeed that was something that was reasonably carried out or not.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, with that, I'll move for approval.
I'll second.
Motion and second. Further discussion on item number 9? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Brings us to item 17.
Morning, Commissioners. Jason Fennison, County Planner. Agenda item number 17 is Conditional Use Permit 1917. The applicant is Manya Larson. She's requesting a conditional use permit to allow an existing 3-bedroom residence to be utilized as a vacation home rental on the subject property. Sorry, I'm trying to get this to come up on the screen. Oh, okay. Zoning ordinance lists 5 factors that the planning commission may consider in their review of conditional use permit applications. There it is, good. These are the 5. I'll give you my analysis of each one. Starting with number 1, the proposed use should not affect the use and enjoyment of, The proposed use should not affect the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity, for the use is already permitted, nor affect property values in the surrounding areas. Number 2, it appears the proposed use should not affect the normal orderly development or improvement of any surrounding vacant property in the area. Number 3, the proposed use should not require any utilities or facilities that are not already in place. Access is provided off of Smoky Ridge Road. Additionally, staff has no drainage concerns specifically related to the applicant's request. Number 4, Pennington County zoning ordinance requires 1 off-street parking space per bedroom. Therefore, the 3 bedrooms, or 3 parking spaces are required for this permit, and it appears that there is adequate parking provided. Lastly, number 5, the proposed use by its very nature should have limited odor, fumes, dust, noise, vibration, or intrusive lighting. As the property sits today, it's currently zoned limited agriculture district, consisting of 3 acres. Access is off of Smoky Ridge Road via platted 33-foot platted access easement. The lot contains a single-family residence, a garage, a tool shed, and a permitted on-site wastewater treatment system. The request was sent out for interdepartmental review. No significant comments came back. VHRs are permitted with approval of conditional use permit in a limited agriculture district, and the applicant has complied with all the application and submittal requirements for a VHR. Therefore, staff recommends approval of conditional use CU 1917 with 15 conditions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay. I don't have any speaker request forms regarding this issue, either from the audience. Seeing no questions, is there a motion for approval?
I would so move.
I'll second.
Motion and second. Further discussion on item number 17. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion passes. Item 18.
Good morning, Christina Proetti, Planner One. Okay, item 18 is conditional use permit 1916. The applicant, Marcia Graber, is requesting to utilize an existing second residence on the subject property as a bed and breakfast. I believe Mrs. Graber is in the audience too. The lot is currently zoned as general agricultural district with a total of 39.52 acres. The lot is considered legal non-conforming. The lot currently contains the primary single-family residence with an attached garage, the secondary homestead house built in 1910, one detached garage, and one gazebo. A note is that the secondary residence, the homestead house, does have a failed septic system according to the observation report turned into us by Hill Septic. This issue, of course, would need to be addressed prior to the operation of the bed and breakfast. There is no special flood hazard area on the subject property. So the applicant is basically requesting a conditional use permit to allow a recreational resort to be utilized on the property, including the renting of the original two-bedroom homestead house as the bed and breakfast, while the Grabers would stay in the primary residence on the subject property. Both residences gain access off of the existing Cosmos Road, which is in the Cosmos Road district. Staff did route this through the interdepartmental review, and there are no other items of concern for this property, and staff is recommending approval with 18 conditions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on item 18?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman? Yeah, I just was curious, this is just one bed and breakfast, but does that, I guess it doesn't strike me as that is a recreational resort, but somehow or another, because bed and breakfasts are classified as recreational resorts, or how does that work?
Thanks, he'll word it better than me.
Yep, no problem. Right now in the current zoning ordinance, recreational resort is the best thing for us to put it under. It's kind of all encompassing. The state defines a bed and breakfast specifically. We don't have that in our ordinance. And so recreational resort is what we put it under to help them comply with the state requirements so we can move it forward.
I see, okay.
I think you had a question, Lloyd?
Yeah, I was, are they still working on the inspections of the septic system?
I believe it was, if you'd like to come up too, we did just receive the observation form, and so we'll see.
Hello, Marcia Graber. What was sent on the septic? I didn't receive any information
Oh, okay.
about any change other than when they inspected it, they said everything looked good.
So we
Oh,
just have
lid
some
cracked.
lid
Oh, yeah.
cracked, and then there's some taint.
So please speak into the,
That was, I'm sorry.
can you state your name
so-
again for the record and then speak into the mic?
Okay, I'm Marcia Graber, the property owner. And we did have Hill Septic come and inspect on, looks like June 10th. And at that point, the septic tank was a little bit over full, but he said it wasn't an issue. We'd had a lot of groundwater with all the rain, so it was pumped. And he said no problem. And then subsequent to that, they did say that there's a little bit of a crack. There's a minor crack in the cement lid for that septic tank, which we'll replace. I think he said there was no other concern about the septic tank. It's on its own septic, separate from the main house.
Okay. So you're working on getting that, get it lined up to get that one replaced that's cracked and everything else?
Yep, we'll get
And-
that lid replaced. That shouldn't be an issue. It's just and it's a very minor crack, but we just need to put a new cement lid on the top of that. No problem with that.
That was my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Christina,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I assume then that we go back and do some formal inspection after this repair has been made?
Yeah, we'll put that in as a condition, and then we would probably
We don't simply rely
require.
on Hill Septic to say it's fixed, right?
No, I don't think that they would submit anything to us, so it would
Okay,
be our job to follow up.
okay.
Any further questions? Seeing none, staff recommends approval of conditional use permit 1916 with 18 conditions. Is there a motion?
I'll move approval.
Second.
Motion and second. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries. Brings us to item number 19.
Okay, item 19 is subdivision regulation variance 1906, excuse me, to waive plating requirements in order to create lots 1 and 2 of Greyhound Gulch subdivision. On December 18th, 2018, layout plat 1840 was approved. And on June 12th, 2019, the applicant, Deborah Legge, applied for the subdivision regulations variance with us. The application is requesting to waive the following plating requirements, that any road construction plans and road improvements to Greyhound Gulch Road. Staff finds that Greyhound Gulch Road is approximately 10 to 12 foot wide, with widths varying along the entirety of the road. Staff does not see an issue with waiving road improvements to Greyhound Gulch Road. It's not a very nice road to begin with.
Okay.
2, percolation tests and soil profile hole information. Percolation tests and soil profile hole information would be required prior to submittal of a building permit for a residence or an on-site wastewater system construction permit. However, staff's understanding is that the applicant / landowners do not have any plans to develop at this time. The lot is currently dual zoned as Suburban Residential District and Low Density Residential with a total of 5.18 acres. Excuse me, that's incorrect. Something's wrong. Yeah.
I'll work on it. You can
I have the wrong presentation up, so it didn't jive with my zoning. But the lot is currently dual zoned with Suburban Residential District and Low Density Residential with a total of 5.18 acres. However, a rezone and comprehensive plan amendment have been applied for and are being heard next at today's hearing after this presentation to address those zoning concerns. Currently, there are no structures on the property, and there's no special flood hazard area on the property either. Both lots are able to gain access from the existing Greyhound Gulch Road. Staff has routed this through the interdepartmental review, and there are no other items of concern for this property. Staff recommends approval of subdivision regulations variance 1906.
Thank you. I have one speaker request form on this, and one speaker request form had 19, but then it crossed out and had 20 listed. Is there a Stella Watson in the audience? If you would please come forth and. Go ahead and state your name for
Bella
the record.
Watson, and I live at 24269, just over the hill. If you've been in the area, you know over the hill means you go down Rattlesnake Draw that goes straight into that property. And it currently is County Road 359, I think. And it's closed to wheeled vehicles. And yet is still constantly being used. And there are barricades that have been placed there by the loggers, and they've been ignored. So I just heard about this, this rezoning. And so I guess what really concerns me or confuses me is the word urban. That is hillbillyville. And it always has been. How can it be urban? You know, what is happening? It's in the country. There's no urbanization that could possibly be done that I could see on that road. how's it gonna happen? And what is going to be the access? What will happen to the, 359 that's being used now to run down there? I don't know what are you doing with urban residential out in the country?
So, well, let me try to clarify a few things. This specific item is to waive the subdivision regulations variance to, for additional road construction plans and improvements and submittal of percolation test for soil profile hole information,
Okay.
which is normally done during the building permit process.
My letter didn't state that.
Okay,
It
so the
stated-
next item, item on the agenda 20, which you also have listed on your speaker request form, is the rezone for the property, that, and the comprehensive plan amendment to change it from low-density residential to suburban residential district.
Okay, well, I addressed both of them, but what are you gonna do with the road?
Nothing.
They
Nothing
don't
is
plan on
proposed.
doing anything with the road.
You've been on the road, have you? Okay, you're not gonna do anything with the road. People are gonna travel on the road as it exists right now, happily and no problems into that property?
Nothing's being proposed on the road at this time, no.
Oh, okay.
Could I ask a question, please?
Go ahead.
So I'm a little mixed up. So the Greyhound Gulch Road, is that the road that you're referring to? And you-
Well, that's the road that you're referring to, or
No, I
the,
know, but the road you're referring to, is that the same as Greyhound Gulch Road?
no, the little road that I'm referring to, I don't know if it shows on this map, but it goes from this Keystone Sewer Lagoon right off of Playhouse Road. And it goes straight over. It curves around and it goes to the sewer lagoon, but if you continue taking it, it's an old mining road.
Right.
And, the loggers just used it. It was closed.
Okay,
to
so it
mill.
comes into this property kind of from the north? Is that what you're saying?
You know the directions.
For Greyhound Gulch, the road that comes from the.
Right in front of my house where the sewer lagoon is.
May I
It's-
speak as well?
Yeah, I don't
No,
know northwest. I
hold
think it
on
would
here,
be
not,
more north.
we'll cover that on the next item. Can you
Yeah.
just maybe pull up, Google Earth or something like that, or can we find out if this
Oh.
road is actually connected to this road?
Yeah, I would bring Rapid Map up, but it's down this
Oh.
morning.
Any way for us to make that view?
So we'll see if Google Earth is on here.
Yeah,
That
I
might
mean,
be our
Ed,
only-
I just don't know how they're gonna happily, easily, successfully gain access to that property.
You have access to internet, Google Maps works too.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead,
can I
Sonny.
just make a comment for your understanding that this step right now, the applicant's just creating lots. And so they're waiving those requirements because those will be probably brought up again later when they actually start developing. As far as your question about how the road would be improved, they're just not at that stage right now. This is just one step in creating the lots. So I understand your concern about the roads, but that probably would come up later when they actually begin any development, if any.
Oh, yeah, I would think that would be one of your first concerns before you even consider it.
In other words, if they were to get a building permit, those issues would probably come up. But at this stage,
Oh,
there's no building permit being applied for. So the use of the road, it's a moot question.
I'm sorry.
Get yourself in there.
I'm not 100% sure where.
Where we're at,
No,
is
you
Keystone.
had it the first time. You're
Was it
moving
up
back
already?
And then this down a little bit, south a little bit. See, that's Playhouse Road that you see kind of in the middle of the map
Playhouse.
going from north to
And there's the
south.
sewer lagoon. Well, where's the property that we're talking about from Playhouse?
Well, isn't that Playhouse Road? that
It's-
comes-
Yeah, I'm just trying to find, and I see the sewer lagoon. I think I see, you see the road that goes to the left there, but I'm not sure what.
Zoom in.
It could be that draw that goes straight there, but you don't show the property on this map that we're talking about, that's on.
Zoom in a little bit more.
Google is at, right above that is the property.
Where is Google?
At the
Oh.
bottom.
Bottom center of the,
It's somewhere in this
Oh.
area.
Pull the map up.
You want this?
No.
Can I help you
We'll get it.
There's Greyhound Gulch.
Okay, uh-huh. So,
That's Greyhound Gulch, and so we can squish it up a little bit and see Playhouse Road. And the property, there's Playhouse Road. Where's the Keystone Sewer? No, it'd be closer to the beginning of Iron, right off of Highway 40.
It's got to be about in the middle of that.
Okay. And I'm thinking that square spot must be the sewer, I don't know.
this,
Anyway, it's right in front of the sewer lagoon. I don't even see it on the map there, the road, but it's, you can see the rugged territory. It's rugged.
so I guess my question though, okay, I'm getting a sense of what does that road that you're discussing have to do with this property?
Currently, and previously, you know, when Gilbert used to live down there, Kurt Gilbert, that road was used. And it's constantly being used by, it still is, but it's not supposed to be used by wheeled vehicles. But it goes straight down into that property. It's quick, easy access.
So your concern is that if the Greyhound Gulch Road is not improved, then people will continue to use
Yeah, and
the
even
road
if it
coming
is
from the north.
improved, they'll continue to use it because it's a shortcut.
Yeah.
And they're gonna use it, and they're using it now. But I know there's some private property on Greyhound Gulch, and, you know, so I guess they'll get into that later, but it's not a county road, 100%. So I just wondered, because it just came up, and I thought we were here to voice our opinions, and I'm sorry.
No, that's
But
that's
an
right. We're
important fact for me, because it goes right in front of my property, and it crosses where the old Harney Ranger Station used to be, and there's a cemetery there, and artifacts, archaeology artifacts and so forth and so on that have been concerns.
okay. Any further questions? Okay. Are there additional speaker request forms on this item? What's that? Agent for the, okay, go ahead.
Good morning. I'm Janelle with Fisk Land Surveying. We're agent for Deborah Legge and her sister, Rhonda Champion. I didn't fill out a speaker request form. I didn't intend to speak unless there were questions relative to this. This is all getting a little confusing this morning, so if I can kind of wrap things up and bring it back to what's happening here. The property does not access off the north portion of Playhouse Road near the lagoon. That's not the primary means of access. It's further down off of Playhouse Road where Greyhound Gulch comes in. And I just want to reiterate, we're not creating any new lots here. We are simply adjusting the lot line between two existing lots. These lots are owned jointly by two sisters. It was in their family. It was deeded to them by their mother. And the acreage is not equal on these properties. One is almost 3 acres, one is almost closer to 2 acres. So what they want to do in order to divide their interest equitably is to adjust this existing common lot line so that they each have the same acreage. And the reason that the rezone is required is because the lots are small enough and they fall within the suburban residential zoning designation is the appropriate designation. It doesn't mean that they're going to develop at any higher density. They simply want to adjust the lot lines equitably. They have, at this point, no plans to build or construct. And yes, the Greyhound Gulch Road is not the best or easily accessible road, but what they're doing is no different than what they have today, just changing the lot size. So if there's any other questions regarding the subdivision variance or the zoning, I'd be happy to answer those. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification. Any further questions on item number 19?
Are the residents good? We all have an understanding of that now? Great. Thanks.
Thanks.
With that, staff recommends approval of the subdivision regulations variance SV 19-06 to waive the two items, including the additional road construction plans and road improvements, and submittal of percolation tests and soil profile hole information.
I so move for approval.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion carries. Brings us to item 20.
Morning again, Commissioners. Jason Fennison, County Planner. Agenda item number 20 is rezone 1909 and Comprehensive Plan Amendment 1909. Applicant is Deborah Legge. Agent is Fisk Land Surveying. The applicant has submitted a request to rezone 3.18 acres from low-density residential district to suburban residential district. Applicant is also requesting to amend the Pennington County Comprehensive Plan to change future land use from low-density residential to suburban residential district. Purpose of the request is to conform with lot size requirements of the zoning ordinance before final plating. Of note, in December 18th, 2018, the Board of Commissioners approved layout plan LPL 1840 to subdivide the property into 2 lots, each approximately 2.5 acres. As it sits today, the property is 5.1 acres. It is dual zoned. 3.18 acres that we're discussing now is zoned low density residential district. The additional 2 acres is zoned suburban residential district. Currently, the property is vacant of any structures. There is no special flood hazard area. And as we've discussed, it takes access off of Greyhound Gulch Road. Current zoning within 1 mile includes general agriculture district, the Keystone City limits, limited agriculture district, low density residential, suburban residential, and planned unit development. Future land use within 1 mile includes public land, planned unit development sensitive, the Keystone City limits, planned unit development, low density residential district, and suburban residential districts. The applicant has also requested to change the future land use of the subject property from low density residential to suburban residential. Applicant's request appears to be in harmony with the county's future land use designations in the area. The request was sent out for interdepartmental review and no significant comments were provided. So again, in December of 2018, the Board of Commissioners approved layout plan LPL 1840 to subdivide the properties into approximately 2.5 acre lots. The minimum lot size requirement for low density residential is 3 acres. In considering the request, there are several suburban residential district properties within 1 mile, including 2 acres of the dual zone property. Therefore, the applicant's request for rezone appears to be in harmony with the current and future land use zoning in the area, and staff recommends approval of rezone 1909 and Comprehensive Plan Amendment 1909.
Okay, thank you. With the clarification that was given on the last item and this item, are there any questions before we bring up speakers?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, sir.
Jason, could you explain to the people that are here the difference between the low-density residential district to switching to the suburban residential district? Because that was one of the things that was brought up just a few minutes ago.
Right, so one of the requirements here that I think the biggest sticking point is that once we rezone the yellow portion, which is the low-density residential portion, the lot size requirement for low-density residential is 3 acres. So once they replant this and turn it into a 2.5 acre lot, that's when they're either going to have to rezone or get a variance.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay. We'll go through the speaker request forms. Stella Watson, do you want to come up and speak on this item again? You had a number 20 listed on your form.
If I'd known some of this before, I would have more detailed questions, but this is my first experience to it. I just don't understand suburban. Why are we doing suburban residential? Yeah, well, what does it mean for what they can do and what can't be done? I mean, what does it mean?
They can still put houses on there. I mean, it's a residential area. Any land that we have out there, whatever it's zoned, you can still put a house on. So I don't think that they have any
What does it
plans
mean to you? And what does it mean to us to go from residential, urban or suburban? It was rural to suburban. I mean, I live out there in the country, and suburban is like Rapid City. So does that mean that they will be able to go and be like Rapid City right there?
No, Jason, can you
Very
explain
suburban.
to me and to us, it means a density of how many homes can be put on a specific
Okay,
lot.
that helps me, thank you. What does that
So,
mean?
what are the densities on low density residential versus suburban residential that we're talking about?
So what they're trying to do here is divide this property. They're gonna make two
Oh,
properties.
yeah, I understand that.
So they can put one house on each. That's it.
Oh, because, but you did say you had to have 3 acres, but they're gonna be able to do it on 2.5?
So zoning for low-density residential is 3-acre minimum.
Oh, uh-huh.
Once they divide these lots,
They can have one house.
right, this line is going to shift.
Okay. But what does it mean to you? What does it benefit you that, I mean, to me, in my mind, it should still be
There's 2 lots there.
rural.
There's 2 lots there. There'll be 2 lots when we're done.
Okay.
It's my understanding that the sisters who were deeded the property are trying to split that property equally and equitably. And in order to do that, they have to take their 3-acre lot and turn it into a 2.5-acre lot. When they do that, it takes them out of the low-density residential zoning district and says now they have to be in suburban residential because they're less than 3 acres. Am I understanding the scenario?
Correct.
Okay. So it ultimately means that each lot is going to be 2.5 acres instead of one being.
Is that all there is to the differences in being zoned?
Yes, but note that suburban residential just allows you to have is a.
Mr. Chairman, could I make a comment?
Go ahead.
It might help, PJ, if you or somebody could just give the lady a copy of the suburban residential or direct her
I
online.
just want to know what the big difference is,
get
you
it?
know, because
Yeah.
I live really close.
So the biggest difference is
Pigs and pigs.
the biggest difference is they could subdivide in the future, no matter what the zoning is, depending also on water availability and the septic. The biggest difference in the zoning ordinance is suburban residential is the most restrictive zoning that we have and has less available permitted and conditional uses on it than low-density residential. And so, the orange is suburban residential and the yellow is low-density residential. So they're moving to a more restrictive zoning district. And I can show you that afterwards. So they'll have less uses they can do on
Yeah,
the
well, it
property.
concerns me about the water too, because we might be tapped into the same water system. Will they have different requirements for drilling a well, and will they have to be tapped into Keystone because they're suburban? Or will they be able to maintain their own water and sewer?
So I don't think they'll be tapped into Keystone, but we'll know that when building permits are applied for, exactly what they're asking for. Anything else, Commissioner?
I don't believe so. Any questions for PJ? Okay. We'll move on to Kelsey and Suzanne McDaniel.
Hi, I'm Kelsey. Thanks for the invitation to come out and be a part of the hearing and
Yeah, go ahead
thank you
and
for giving us
speak into
the
this,
speak.
the mic, because it doesn't pick you up when you're away.
Thank you for inviting us out to attend the hearing and learn more about what's going on. Susan is my wife, we have 2 children. And may I use your presentation and show the slide that showed the 1 mile
Sure, Jason, can you come up and help out there?
circle that you have
And
there?
could you tell me who you are again?
Yes, ma'am. My name is Kelsey McDaniel. I'm a homeowner and a landowner in the vicinity of this property.
Oh, okay, thank you.
If you look on the map here, on the bottom right-hand corner of that circle, where the road goes out, Playhouse Road and Oak Meadows Road, we own the property where Oak Meadows Road begins. We own the southern property over about 7 acres of land and a home with 2 kids. We, like Stella, tremendously value the privacy, the lack of density, the lack of cars on the road, the lack of variances that prohibit our lifestyle. Particularly for me, what I'm concerned about is our lifestyle includes a lot of using firearms, learning to use firearms, using them safely in our property. And that right there is very close to what you're proposing. Our land is very close to what's being proposed as a residential suburban zoning. So my concern is not about this particular 2-lot situation combination. My concern is what happens when the 1 mile around that proposition is now closer and closer and closer to my property and to our property. I have a lot of neighbors who are not here today who share my interests as well. So how does that encroachment of this suburbanization, we're country, we like it out there, we want it to stay country. We don't want subdivisions being built with multiple houses and rental properties causing a lot of traffic, because Playhouse Road is very slim, dangerous, very poorly maintained in the winter, and it cannot support a whole lot more traffic than it has right now. It's already dangerous enough in the summertime with tourism. So those are our concerns I wanted to address. My questions specifically are, if this property gets rezoned, well, first of all, why not just give them a variance to the present zoning and not change the zoning at all so that we don't have that future threat? That would be my first question. And the second question is, if you don't do that and you do approve this rezoning of suburban in the wild, what happens to the people who live right on the outskirts of that? Does it affect our rights and our privileges? And if so, please help me understand in what way.
Okay. Janelle, do you want to speak on the questions?
Yes, absolutely. Janelle Fink again. Just to clarify, one of your first questions was why not grant a zoning variance instead of changing the zoning? The criteria for a zoning variance or exception are more difficult or stringent to meet. There has to be some physical reason why you can't change the zoning or why it won't meet the zoning requirement. And there really isn't any physical barrier here. There's no topographic issues with changing the zoning. So the change to suburban residential is really more appropriate than a variance. There isn't any reason why you can't change it to suburban residential. The one lot is already zoned suburban residential. So, and it has been since probably the 80s was when it was created and zoned suburban residential. So it's been there for ages. This lot next door, right next to it, happened to be over 3 acres. So it was that just above that threshold for the low density residential. The change in the zoning doesn't impact the use of adjacent property. You're still regulated by whatever your zoning is, whether you're limited ag or whatever your zoning is. So their use of the property doesn't impact what you can do on your property. It doesn't, it has no effect on that.
What about Stella? Same thing?
Yeah.
She's in that 1 mile zone.
It doesn't matter. What they're doing on their property and what the zoning designation is has no impact on what your property and your zoning designation is. They're two separate things. So you still get to use your property based on your zoning. They get to use the property based on theirs. And so that you know, there are, even though the zoning is different, there are still state regulations that come into play regarding how you can use the property, how much land area you have to have, if you have an individual well, an on-site waste disposal system. So there are other regulations that go along with potential development. And today you have 2 lots, and tomorrow you're going to have 2 lots. All they're going to be is just zoned equitably and divided equitably.
And just so you know, sorry, PJ Common, Director, Planning Department, that 1 mile circle is just an arbitrary circle the Planning Commission uses, either a half mile or Planning Department uses either a half mile or a mile, just to show what we're looking at as far as whether the zoning request is in harmony.
Including the rest of the property within that?
It's just showing what planning staff looked at
Oh, I see.
within
So
1
the
mile.
rezoning is only specific for the property in that trapezoid?
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's only for that property right there.
That helps me. I didn't understand that.
Yep, that's it.
Okay, so the national forest land that surrounds this property that we hunt on, I'm assuming obviously there's encroachment upon this property in that area. That would then be my only other concern,
There's no change to the National Forest Service property.
as far as how close you can be shooting to this property now. That doesn't change anything. Okay. All right, well, thank you for your time, everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your questions.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Lloyd.
I think this is a good lesson for everybody. I think you guys got this letter and it scared you and you didn't understand what it all entailed, and I understand that. So the good part is you learned some good stuff today. And PJ and the planning department are always here to answer any of your questions. I think they answered quite a bit for you, but they they'd be more than happy to sit down with you guys and discuss anything further that you have. I mean, you're in town now, and you know it's right upstairs to the to the right. If you ever have any questions, up when you get notices like that, to contact and ask questions.
Any other questions before I move on to the next speaker? The next speaker was Richard Connect on item 20.
I have a very bad hearing problem, and I'm sorry. But I would like to make a statement for this area. We've had in that area, we've had property in our family since 1927. So this is very important to me. So number one, the thing I'm objecting to is spot planning. And in my opinion, spot planning is a horrible thing to get into, because we're taking a great big section of property and we're considering a 3.8 acre of property and having that spot zoned into a totally different thing. So I don't like that. Then if somebody wanted to do a big development in there, they should go for a PUD. And that's probably in the 40-acre area that you'd never do that. So this sets a very bad precedent about going forward with this thing. I wanted to read a couple things here. And since I can't hear very well, I'm just going to make the statement, and then I'll get off the stage here. First of all, what this property is right now is low-density residential. And it says in the covenants here, this is intent, to allow low-density residential areas by design, or to establish low-density residential areas which may not be suited for higher density development by reason of topography, geology, drainage, or similar problems. Then passing over, this is what we have now. Passing over this for minimal lot requirements. This is all approved uses shall have a minimum lot size of 3 acres, exclusive of dedicated public streets or platted drives. So in that sentence right there, we've got a lot that has 3.8, so there should be one building site on that, or the property should not be divided into 2 sites and then completely spot. Okay, now what the applicant is after is to change it to Suburban Residential District. Now the intent in that is to establish a medium-density residential area where central water and or sewer is provided, excluding uses which are not compatible with residential use, but permitting certain non-residential uses which are particular convenience to the residents of the district. And so we go to minimum lot requirements. All approved uses shall have a minimum lot size of 3 acres, exclusive of the dedicated public streets. So we basically that that sounds to me like we've got to have a public street assessing that area. Well, that particular road has been in there as a private road for a heck of a long time, ever since I was a little kid. And they're all developmental mining sites, basically. And the road has never been a well-maintained road. It's a one-track road. It has pullouts on the side if somebody's coming the other way. And it's not really, I don't know exactly what the county calls that road, but it's not a public road in my estimation, and it's privately maintained by the first 3 or 4 homeowners that are in that area. So anyway, this is my plea. Don't jump into spot zoning ever, if you can. Avoid it. So that's my statement, and I appreciate your listening to me. Thanks.
Thank you for your statement. Are there any questions for Mr. Connect?
Mr. Chairman, I just have one question. PJ,
Go ahead.
currently, one house can be built on each lot, is that correct?
That is correct. It's lot 1 and lot 2. They're already separate lots.
I understand that. And when we merely move the lot line, will it still only be one house on one lot?
That's correct.
Suburban residential does not increase the density.
No, it doesn't. It has a minimum, but on any residential zoning district, anybody can increase density in the future. Without,
Let's keep
It's
order
already
in the
spot
meeting.
zoned.
well,
Let's keep order in the meeting, please. Go ahead, Sandy, with your questions to PJ.
so whether it's suburban residential, general agriculture, low-density residential, the owners can request a subdivision at any time. It's their property.
In the future.
Correct.
But the lot sizes, as requested right now, would only allow one house on each lot.
That is correct.
So the density is not changing. Still, one house, one lot, unless they were to subdivide, but that would be a whole different issue in the future.
Whole other process, and letters would go out and everything.
Thank you.
For the variances. Yep.
Any further questions? Okay, with that, staff is recommending approval of rezone 19-09 and comprehensive plan amendment, CA 19-09. Is there a motion?
I so move.
Second.
Motion and second for approval. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries. Brings us to item 21.
Good morning, Brittany Molitor, Environmental Planning Supervisor. Item 21 is a request to subdivide to create 2 lots from 3 lots. You guys have seen this request previously, where they wanted to go from 3 lots to 3 lots. The property owner is Mr. Jeff Shear. He has applied for this layout plat to create 2 buildable lots from 3 existing lots. As the property stands today, it consists of a lot D of lot 17 of Fort Meade Placer, which consists of 7.42 acres. It is zone low-density residential district, which requires a minimum 3-acre lot size. Access is off of Thunderhead Falls Road. It is maintained by Pennington County Highway. There is more than 40 lots on a dead-end road. This lot does contain a retail store that was built in approximately 1970 and a commercial utility building, and what is better known as the Thunderhead Falls area. The second lot in this request is lot 1 of lot A of lot 8 of lot E. It is also zoned low-density residential district. There is a restriction on the plat for this lot that a holding tank could be used as the only means of wastewater disposal if a building permit was submitted for this lot. It is to access off of Thunderhead Falls Road. It is vacant of any structures at this time. There is special flood hazard area on all three of these properties, including floodway. The last of these lots is Lot B of Lot A of Lot E of the Big Bend Placer MS 1442. It too is zone low density residential district. It consists of 0.03 acres and it is vacant of any structures. This was probably a correction of the plan when the road was constructed. The property owner is requesting two lots, proposed lot D1, which would consist of 4.5 acres. It would still be able to be zone low density residential district. There would be a shared access with lot D2 off of Thunderhead Falls Road. They are proposing to put a single family residence on this lot, and there is special flood hazard area, including floodway on this lot. Lot D2 would consist of a little over 4.5 acres. It too is zone low density residential district. It does share that access with lot D1. A proposed single family residence is requested on this lot. They have submitted a building permit for the proposed structure on this lot already. And this lot would contain that retail store, the commercial utility building, and what is better known as Thunderhead Falls. This was routed through the interdepartmental review. There were a couple items that came back from the Department of Equalization for some changes to the plat heading. There is some concern that there are greater than 40 lots on this road. However, they have two existing buildable lot areas, and so they are going to two existing buildable lot areas. There are approximately 57 lots served by Thunderhead Falls Road, which is above the 40 that is required in our subdivision regulations. However, our subdivision regulations were implemented in November 12th of 2008, and the last plat along Thunderhead Falls Road that increased density was filed July 6th of 2000. There are several creek crossings prior to these lots. There are two church camps, one church camp and one Salvation Army camp along this road also. But staff is recommending approval of this layout plat with 8 conditions. I'll entertain any questions.
Any questions for staff before speakers?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
At what point does it become problematic in terms of hazards to the expansion of lots in this area?
Well, there's
on
only
a dead-end road. 40 is a limit that is the county has tried to subscribe to. You see there are 57 structures, and this does not count, of course, the number of people involved in these camps and so forth. I mean, is there some point at which we should be concerned? Should one of those 7 bridges or whatever fail, or there be a fire? I mean, is anyone thinking about this, or should we simply? We've noted this, and I know we've gone through this before in other properties, but should we be concerned about this? I know the only concern of the property owner, he wants to develop the property and, turn it into something other than a pretty wide space next to the road. But at what point do we have to be concerned, or should we be? And I'd like to know what the rationalization is, since the planning department is suggesting we approve this.
Right, there is concern, obviously, on one means of ingress and egress. That's the preface for having the minimum 40 acres, just because, of escape. There has been some talk with the Presbyterian Church camp of connecting to, I forget what road is on the other side there, but the concern with that is that you would still have to cross another bridge. So there's another bridge crossing between that road to get across. So even if you had that second means of ingress and egress, you're still crossing a number of bridges because of how the creek goes through there. I know that there's been significant testimony in regards to that concern for safety when the Salvation Army had their PUD review up. There was a lot of concern and discussion with that. I believe that as part of their PUD, they have an escape plan and certain things for them. But as far as staff, when we looked at this, right now, if this property owner were to come in and request 2 building permits, one for one of lot A and one for the existing lot, we would have to issue them because there's 2 buildable lots. So that's staff's rationale for recommending approval, because as it stands today, because there are 2 existing lots, they could, we would have no reason to not approve those building permits. So that is the reason that staff is recommending approval of that, because they're going from 2
So
lots
why
to
is it
3 lots.
necessary to have this change in order to develop the property?
That would be a question for the property owner. I believe that there is some shared expenses, or there's a partner or something involved.
Okay.
We can address that with the speaker requests. I would note that they had the previous submittal proposed to increase the lots to 3 lots instead of 2 lots, and that was denied by the commission at the last meeting, if I'm not
Correct.
mistaken.
And they did withdraw that at the Board of Commissioners meeting.
So, okay, further questions? Sunny, did you have one?
Yeah, I was just wondering if the creek crossings have been flooded over or blocked at all this season.
I am not aware of that. I have not asked. And the Highway Department didn't comment on it during the routing request.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? We'll go to the first speaker request, Shannon Vasconets. Hopefully I said that right. Go ahead and state your name for the...
Shannon Vosnitz, Baseline Surveying. Actually did the survey on the project, representing Jeff and other parties. So what we're looking at now, of course, the difference from last time is last time we presented 3 lots. This time we're back presenting 2, because really that was really Jeff and his partner's whole concept the whole time was to just really, what their goal is to have 2 buildable lots on the property. So we currently have 3 goofy kind of parcels allowed on, or that the lots pertain, but we're just trying to clean all that up and make 2 real good usable buildable lots on the property. So as you can see by the drawing, we do have some floodplain obviously in the area. We have done the necessary studies and everything, working with engineering firm to come up with the base flood elevation, all the lines and everything on that. So knowing that we are working directly with the homeowners to place their homes so that, and that the everything else, the septics and wells, so that everything is in compliance when we are dealing with this close to a floodplain. So other than that, I mean, you're looking on and then of course on the north side, this is probably most irregular shaped lot I've ever worked with in my career, but up there on the north side with that, I mean, both landowners are very well aware that due to the floodplain and the coverage up there, that nobody could ever build anything up there other than maybe have a picnic someday or something on the right day. But so I think other than that, that's all I have. So
Okay.
unless anybody else has any questions. So.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Vasconets?
Okay, I have a question. So what will happen if we don't approve this? What will your client do? Will he build 2 homes, or will he do something different?
Well, I mean, he's here. He can speak for himself. But I mean, obviously, we have the right to get 2 building permits. The one would be very, very difficult to build on, the way it lies. But like I said, I think they're doing the best they can with the property to make it 2 really nice and much safer building envelopes, and for two homes to be there. So
if this were to be approved and the homes were to be sited, would they be sited more safely somehow in view of the terrain and the floodplain and so forth than if this was not approved?
Absolutely. I mean, that's why kind of talking about working with engineering and with myself, we are the ones that control the placement of those homes and helping the landowner say, you know, if they say I want to build here and I know, well, that's in the floodplain. You can't build there. So it's our direction given to them saying, no, we need to be here and this is your building envelope. This is where your house needs to be in compliance with FEMA, with the county, with all those issues. So.
Sorry. Mr. Chair, is it okay to?
Go ahead.
Right, Commissioners, just a quick update for you. So these are the lots as they exist today. So that largest lot there that's outlined in yellow, if they applied for a building permit for that property, even though the subdivision hasn't exist yet. That building permit was approved this morning because there's nothing for our department to say no to. That location of that building permit is right here and meets what Commissioner Coleman was saying is probably the safer spot of that property. So it's outside of the floodplains.
And then the second house that they're proposing is just down from that, yet outside of the floodplain as well, correct? Is that what I'm seeing?
Looks like the second one is here, and as far as I'm aware, I haven't seen the building permit for that yet. That would also probably have to come with a floodplain development permit, where the other one did not.
Yeah, and can I draw on that?
Yep, and just pick a color and then draw.
I'll stick with. So really, you see the placement of here.
It's okay.
I just basically want to point out the whole building area on that lot D1.
Yeah, what happened to it? It's not responding anymore. There you go.
So really, that's just something I would like to point out is that homeowner has that area building space now once we create, you know, with the lot lines that we have proposed to you. So it gives them a lot, just as big as a room, just a large enough space as the other lot does, and a safer. So that particular landowner, he wanted to, you know, get as close to the stream as they can, and that's, like I said, that's our direction to help them meet setbacks, meet safety, meet, you know, where the floodplain line truly is. So, because if they don't, I mean, it's opening a whole nother can of worms just with FEMA, not with Pennington County. I mean, you really have to. That's where that flood building, you know, that permit that was talked about earlier comes into play too. So, because we have to prove that before we can issue that building permit for that home and the placement of it. So.
Any further questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next speaker request is Scott Sumner.
Morning, my name's Scott Sumner. And Shannon mentioned the owner of that lot to the left. And that's a little bit perhaps confusing because there's only one owner at the present time, which is Jeff Shear. Jeff Shear purchased all of this property from the Johnson estate. And you can see on the bottom center of your map, across the road to the south, there's a little lot A of lot 1 of, I can't read it, but it goes on from there, a little tiny sliver. He also purchased that. That's just the way the estate offered the land for sale. The staff mentioned there's a little tiny triangle of land just in the more or less the middle of just north of the road. That I did a lot of studying of the history of the plats out here. There's been a lot of changes. That's why you get the lot 1 of lot A of lot E of lot 8 or whatever, because each one of those is a plat that was laid on top of a former plat, laid on top of a former plat, and so forth. So they own that little piece to the south as well. The reason Jeff Shear is good friends with a couple named Grant and Sharon Shearmeister. And Durant and Sharon were also interested in this property, but they had a land swap issue that they needed to work out with another piece of ground. And so Jeff's name was on the purchase agreement and on the deed. But when Jeff purchased the property, the Shearmeisters had an option to purchase the second building site on the property. So there's paperwork in process, if you will, for a sale of a portion of the property to the second homeowner. This amounts to, as it's presently presented to you, a rather complex perhaps, but still just a lot line revision between the lot 1 of lot A down to the bottom left there, closer to the southwest end of the parcel, and the larger parcel. It's a complex revision of the lot line, as you can see. I don't mean to repeat things that we talked about before, but the long skinny neck that connects the two parcels together is the actual underground Thunderhead Falls pathway. It's where the cavern is, so to speak, and where the water flows. And so it was laid out this way for mining purposes originally, is my understanding. The land on the north side, the top part of the sideways H there, if we'll call it that, the creek runs right through the middle of that as well. And so it has pretty dramatic restrictions for its usability. There's practically speaking no use to be made from that, other than, as Shannon mentioned, occasional outings, you might say. So that's the explanation for the odd shape of the route. In trying to lay this out into 2 lots instead of the 3 that were originally presented, they're trying to accomplish several goals. One that Shannon emphasized, which I am happy to have heard him emphasize, is the improved safety of the placement of the second home, as opposed to having to put it down in that smaller lot way down in the corner. It's a safety in terms of floodway. The second item, the public health concern, is septic. The smaller lot was by condition, I think, stated on their plat when it was platted, requires a holding tank. By rearranging the lot lines the way is presently proposed, both lots exceed the minimum requirement for septic. So, and there's a little bit of a confusion on the acreage. I think it's somewhere in the paperwork, it says that this is a larger lot with 7.4 acres. We're actually, a more recent survey pegs it something closer to 9 acres. And I think one of the staff members mentioned some acreages in passing that corroborate that, because the 2 lots, each of them are roughly 4.5 acres as proposed. So in effect, what we're really asking is just to revise the lot line between the lot 1 of lot A in the lower portion and the larger lot D of lot 17, which is the Thunderhead Falls property, so that we can get 2 safely buildable lots. It does not increase the density over the density that's presently available. It just creates 2 safer building locations with adequate sizing for our septic. I think that ends my comments. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions for Mr. Sumner? Okay, thank you. With that, staff had made a recommendation for approval of layout plat LPL 1921 with 8 conditions. Is there a motion?
I'll move approval. I'll second.
Motion and second. Further discussion.
Mr. Chair, I just
Go ahead, Sonny.
just want to say my thoughts on this is this started off with an issue and these changes and the issue of the number of lots. And this doesn't change that, but it is an improvement. So just want to point that out before we vote. I think we may all be on the same page there.
Okay. Further discussion.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I would agree with Sonny. It's an improvement. And I guess we should compliment the gentleman and the surveyor for making this a slightly safer endeavor than it is. But ultimately, I think at some point, and maybe these are decisions, I guess, that maybe we don't make, and that they should be made by the county board. Somebody needs to draw a line in terms of the development in these highly hazardous areas. I mean, when the disaster comes, and no doubt in time it will, and perhaps with the way weather's changing, it'll come more quickly than we anticipate. Someone needs to say that there are certain areas that have reached sort of their maximum development capacity. And I think this is one area. Yeah, I drove out there yesterday, and I hadn't been there for several years, and I was stunned at how tight and how difficult the terrain is, and how beautiful it is, I might add, and I can see the appeal. I lived on a creek on Nemo Road, and I had a great affection for it, and I understand why people would do this. But I'm going to vote against it, knowing, of course, that it will pass. But because I think some statement needs to be made about these development issues, which are potentially, I think, could be really hazardous in the future. So, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you for your comments. Go ahead, Jim. Go ahead, Blake.
I'd just like to respond a little bit to that. I think the present commission that we have now is, as with these dead-end roads, they've been supporting that no more building and so forth, but also, as in this case stated, the lots were there and they can build. And at this point, and we've encouraged property in the past of combining lots, just as this one did, so they couldn't, to reduce that down because they've reached their 40. You know, the 40 was what they came up with as a safe number. But of course, as time goes on and changes and boards change, when people come to every board, as it revolves, there's a circumstance that changes that. So that's how they kind of got to this, where it is now. But I mean, you could ask PJ, I think they've been holding their ground on not allowing any more over 40, but sometimes our hands are tied also.
Yeah, PJ Conlon, Director of Planning Department. Commissioner LaCour is absolutely right. There's been a lot of legal determinations on this, and we don't have legal representation here today, so I'll do my best to do it a layman's term. But if it was previously platted prior to, and I forget the certain date, there's a reasonable expectation from the landowners that a residence could be built there. So there really isn't any movement from the commission or the department that we can deny a building permit for that. So further subdivision, that we can recommend denial of. In this case specifically, they're actually reducing density by one lot, even though that third lot that they have now isn't really buildable, but they do have 2 buildable lots right now.
Let me respond if I could to that.
Go ahead.
I agree with you, and I don't want to be simply argumentative. And I would say that the thrust of my argument is in some ways simply a protest. Because quite frankly, no matter how attractive the lot situation might be, I don't think there should be any more development back there because of the difficult, access, and this has been discussed in the past. And also, of course, the reality that probably any other access or egress is probably almost as problematic as some of these. These gentlemen have improved a lot, and for that purpose, I should probably vote for it. But I'm going to maintain a no vote, simply to illustrate that I think we need to be very attentive to putting limits on areas, and this is a unique place, but it also is uniquely, hazardous, and so that's hopefully clarifies my justification for this vote.
No, thanks for your comment, Jim. My only comment to that, and I won't go too far without the legal representation here, but if you're taking away someone's functionality of the property that they own, and they're complying with the zoning and those types of things. I'm sure there's some sort of taking that would be involved and costs associated with that. Catherine, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I just want to add that, of course, public safety is important, and as it should be, and it should be on our mind. But the fact, the real fact of this is that if there is a massive flood or something, whether there's 20 houses out there or 30 houses or 40 or 50, it's not going to make any difference. I mean, it's going to be a big catastrophe, and so certainly the fact that there's going to be 2 houses on those three lots, or 1 house, isn't going to matter. I mean, it's the damage in terms of creating a public hazard was done a long time ago, and so it's I kind of defer to and I agree with what Rich said, that there's some real legal issues denying building permits. I mean, it's a takings of property right. But irrespective of that, I mean, the damage was done a long time ago. Whether there's 1 more or 2 more isn't going to change the situation.
Any further comments? With that, staff is recommending approval of layout plat LPL 1921 with 8 conditions. Is there a motion?
We already made the motion.
We made the motion.
Who did?
I did.
I'm sorry, and it was second?
Yeah.
We're on discussion.
Yeah.
My
we just
apologies.
finished Discussion.
No more discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
So we had 5 yes, 1 no. Motion carries. We are now on item number 22.
Yep. Item 22 is rezone 1910 and comprehensive plan amendment 1910 to rezone 32.58 acres from general agriculture district to limited agriculture district, and to amend the Pennington County Comprehensive Plan to change the future land use from general agriculture district to limited agriculture district. The applicant is Dwayne Scott, and the other landowners are Travis and Melissa Woodward. As you see on the pictures here, it shows up as 1 lot. The owner of the property legally subdivided the property into 2. The top portion we'll call A, the bottom portion we'll call B. So they took that 35 plus acres and divided the top portion, which is 20.98, and the bottom portion, which is 11.6. They did not have to go through the platting process, which is why you've never seen it. State law allows them, if they can eloquently describe the properties, they can file the deed and create those with the Register of Deeds, which they did. When they did that, it brought both properties into non-compliance for lot size because of the zoning. So this zoning request is to bring the properties into compliance as limited agriculture, because they are currently zoned general agriculture that has a 40-acre minimum. There's no structures on either property. This was routed through the interdepartmental review. The only item of note that came back is from the county environmental planning supervisor, just mentioning that the soils on the property are rated very limited by the USDA subsoil survey, and this limitations includes slow water movement, ponding, depth of the saturated zone, and depth to bedrock. So just wanted to make sure the applicant was aware of that. And within 2 miles of the subject property, the zoning districts which exist are general agriculture, limited agriculture, and suburban residential. And those are the same zoning districts for the future land use in the same area. The applicant's request appears to be in harmony with the surrounding land use. And with that, staff would recommend approval of rezone 1910 and comprehensive plan amendment 1910.
Any questions for PJ before I go to the speaker requests? Okay, we'll start with Luann Eppard.
Luann Eppard. I live at 23115 153rd Avenue, which is just down from this property. I think that one is maybe I'm not understanding exactly what they're asking, but our understanding was that they wanted to break this into 10-acre lots. Is that incorrect then?
At this time, we're only rezoning. PJ, can you address that with the request?
Yeah, sure. Right now, it's just the 20-plus acre lot to the north and the 11-plus acre lot to the south. I'm not sure what the landowner's future plans are for the larger acreage. They're A there.
Okay. Well, the reason I'm here today was really just to say that, our concern would be that if that would be they would ask for it to be broken down into additional lots for people to build on, is just that 153rd Avenue is not maintained by the county, and so additional traffic is a concern. And also just water in that area, people are hauling water for, any agriculture that they're, any animals that they have on the properties there because of poor well use. So that's our concern about just how that property then would change from what it is today.
Okay.
Thanks.
Any questions for Luann? Okay. The next speaker is Paul Sheets.
Hello, I'm Paul Sheets. I live in that area. So I have the same questions Luann does. I need a little explanation from PJ or Jason on what general ag and limited ag, what it can open up for a future 40-acre plotted area, and that's how I like to keep it.
Okay. PJ, can you come up and address those questions?
Sure. So, so if I understand your question is what can they do on the property? Is that?
Why they wanting to change from general to limited, because they've already subdivided into 11 acres? I didn't know that, I guess.
Yep. So the reason the rezone is here is to bring the property into compliance. So as it is zoned now, they're supposed to have 40 acres for that zoning district. Even the property that exists now is 32 acres, so it was grandfathered for lot size. So they subdivided the bottom portion. And to bring the two properties into compliance, because they're both under 40 acres, they have to go through the rezone process.
Okay. And their future plan is?
No. I don't know, but I will address what was brought up as a concern from the last speaker, is they could subdivide that property A through the Register of Deeds through the same process as they created property B. And our staff would not be involved in it.
Would you explain that process again?
Sure.
Briefly, not in a lot of detail.
Yeah. If you can describe out the property enough to be able to create the boundaries. And
I understand that. Thank you. I understand.
Okay.
I'm gonna have a question for you too, PJ. How can someone go through the process of subdividing a property that puts them not in compliance with the zoning regulation? Does that seem odd?
These will usually get after the fact because it's a process that's done through state law with the Register of Deeds. And there's no process for them to double check with this, nor do I believe that they're required to.
Interesting.
This usually occurs with much larger properties where they're trying to subdivide sections or half sections down. So the zoning doesn't get touched, so you'll never see it. Very rarely do we get one like this that requires a rezone after the fact.
Okay. Catherine, did you have a question?
Well, not really a question. I just wanted to ask about an item, and really this is relevant, on our consent agenda, where the one off of Cosmos Rose, where they pulled the plating request, that's because their intent is to do what we're talking about here, isn't it? Describe the parcels.
Eloquently.
That's the term they
the southwest quarter, northwest quarter of the, that's exactly what they're doing.
That's exactly what they're doing. So.
And legally they're allowed.
Yes, that's right. So when we were talking about this process, it is used in certain circumstances.
Yep. That's correct. And that individual, since you brought it up, Commissioner, they'll be seeking a lot size variance for those lots that they're creating through that eloquent description.
Right, exactly. Yeah, number 11 on our consent agenda is exactly what they're talking about here.
Correct.
So,
Does that answer your question, sir?
Partially, I guess I've understood. I've learned a lot from just watching some of the other things go. I'm kind of like Mr. Connect. I don't want to spot zone something and open the doors.
Sure.
So I'm a little apprehensive now. Also knowing that that property was bought when it was all sectioned out and plotted out. The Scots being zoners. They know what they're doing and they buy land. So I'm really kind of I'm not sure how I feel about it now. I thought it was just because it was less than 40, they just wanted to make it a zoning change, but now I see it's already cut down to 11 once. When's it gonna end? 153rd is terrible. I don't live on that road. I live over in the other quarter section, the northeast corner. So I'm just here for the rest of the neighbors and look out for them.
You live in the northeast quarter of the section to
Yep,
the
on
west?
Justice Lane. Justice Lane on 13. So,
Which one?
Are you in section
Well,
14?
which one is it?
yeah, this right here. That's my 40. Water is limited, and that road would not be able to handle any more people on it. But I appreciate you listening to me out. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
And one item of note, that road on 153rd Avenue, which actually ends about to the 40 above it, is in the section line. So any work that needs to be done in there will come through our department.
Okay. Any further questions on agenda item number 22? Okay, staff recommends approval of rezone 19-10 and comprehensive plan amendment CA 19-10. Is there a motion?
I move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second?
Motion and second. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries. Brings us to item 23.
Item 23 is the county board report. The Board of Commissioners concurred with the Planning Commission's recommendation from the July 8th, 2019 Planning Commission meeting.
Any questions on that? Okay. Item 24, items from the public. And I had no further speaker request forms, so. Okay, seeing none. Items from staff, number 25.
Sure. Item A is bylaws committee update. Just as a reminder, Commissioner Rundy, Commissioner Johnson, Commissioner Marsh, and I are making up the bylaw committee. We're going to meet for the first time after the meeting today briefly. I believe the plan, and fill in where I'm wrong, is to look at the current version of the bylaws, look at some existing versions of other planning commission bylaws that are out there, and then everybody comment individually and meet after the planning commission meetings, at a minimum, at least that.
Yep. Yeah, my thought on the approach is that I want everyone to digest everything that we currently have, what other people are doing, and then come to the meeting maybe with fresh ideas. So we're not discussing things and then focusing on those things. I think that maybe we'll come with different ideas. That's my hope anyway, to improve things.
Yeah, I agree. It's my understanding that we will have all of the material ahead of time before any meeting, so we can read it, digest it. So when we come to a meeting, we have pertinent information and relevant comments.
Yep.
Yeah,
We can
thank you.
discuss that after the meeting.
Okay. Item B is the draft comprehensive plan amendment update. Matrix Design Group has your comments and are making the updates. They still have not corrected that map on chapter 13. They're on the tail end of their projected deadline for that. An update was brought before the Board of Commissioners, and they're looking at a first hearing possibly in October. That date has not been picked yet. September was not considered primarily because it's the budget month. Nothing further.
Okay. Any items from the membership? Okay, I have one item. Lloyd, how does the speaker request form get introduced, discussed during the commission meeting?
You know, at the very beginning of the meeting, it's pronounced that speaker request forms are back there. One suggestion that I would make is when you announce that, I think it's respectful that we know, especially with the planning commission, you know who the applicant is. So, I mean, you would take them forward anyhow. Sometimes it might be good to suggest out there that people fill them out, but if they don't wish to speak, just in case, you know, that, I think that's what the big thing is. They don't have to speak when they fill it out. It's, they're out there, if they have a question, they filled one out just so you could recognize them. The whole purpose of it is not to limit it or anything along those lines, is that we get a lot of people that come in and don't know the process and the structure of how a meeting works. And when you throw this out, you know, then you recognize them because you're calling them by name. And if they still don't wish to speak, just because they filled it out doesn't mean they have to.
Okay. So my comment is that it was somewhat disruptive, and maybe it was because I think the gentleman indicated he was hard of hearing, and so maybe he spoke louder. Wondering if I should introduce this prior to the meeting and kind of give instructions to the group before the meeting even starts, so as to try to minimize that disruption during the meeting, and then your staff having to help. And thoughts on that from the group?
Well, this is new, so the county commission had the same thing. As it's just trying to get the focus going and so forth. But yeah,
Well, I like the order it brings to the process.
Yeah, and it will I think you were right. It was kind of disruptive back there when you have somebody who's hard of hearing and so forth like that. But we'll have to work through that. You may, as chairman, you're going to have to just, you might have to stop what we're doing, help somebody out, or explain how you want it to work for your group.
Okay.
It's not study hard. There's not a lot of rules to it. They kind of left it up to the chairman. Even the commission, during the commission meetings, we still let people speak who haven't filled one out.
Okay.
For the courtesy, but it gives us that structure. So if we run into a difficult situation or a difficult item, we have the structure in place, and then we can say, okay, well, we need to slow down and limit to 3 minutes, or we have 20 people that want to speak on this item. At least you got a list and you can work through them and so forth.
Okay. And Commissioner Marks, one additional advantage I'll say that the board has is they're able to announce those twice during the meeting, once in the very beginning, and then they take an intentional break right before planning and zoning items, and then they announce it again, where the planning commission doesn't have that break.
Okay.
You could, if you wanted to, we could fit it in where you do it between consent and regular. I don't know how many more you'd get, but it is a possibility if you're looking to announce it twice.
Well, I think I'll probably just speak up before I start the meeting and mention it to see if there's people that want to do that. And then I'll say it again once I start the meeting, maybe, and try to just minimize the disruption.
We could also put it on a slide that's viewable while
Good
people are
idea,
coming
too.
in. And we could do
That's
that.
a good idea. I think that's a real good idea.
I can't miss it there. That's a really good idea. Let's do that.
We'll come up with something for next meeting.
Thanks,
Mr.
PJ.
Chair,
Go
I just
ahead.
have a comment about this as well. I have mixed feelings about this speaker request form because on one hand, I see it's valuable as far as organization, but I don't like the idea or the possibility of it being a barrier to people who want to speak. For example, there's a lot of information on that. Like if someone doesn't want to give their email address, they might just say, well, forget it, I'm not going to fill out this form. And another is, for sometime in the middle of a meeting, somebody may realize that they would like to make a comment. They didn't think so ahead of time, and they shouldn't not be able to speak because of not having filled the form. So my suggestion for that perhaps is that once you've gotten through those who have provided speaker request forms, to still say, if anybody who's not and would now like to speak, then still give other people an opportunity.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Lloyd.
I totally agree with you. I mean, there's some people who don't want it. There's no requirement for filling those out. This is, like I said, is a structured event for the chairman. It's a tool for him. Some people run meetings such as ours as you can only speak if you have this filled in, and they don't allow any back and forth. I mean, we're really laxed as how the structure of this one's going. I think so far we're still in the learning phase, and we're still pretty lax, but our meetings aren't out of control as some of those other ones were. That's why they're so strict on theirs. I think we're more personable with our client, our customers than most other people. So I think, uh, I look at it as more of the respectful part of it, of people who haven't had the experiences such as today we had 3 or 4 people that never been to a meeting before, didn't know what was going on. At least they had the speaker request and they were called on. And it was still a challenge from the explaining how these meetings work to whether you can't yell from the audience, you got to come up and speak,
Sure.
that type of thing. So.
Okay. I think that's a good comments from both of you guys. I appreciate it. I think it does organize at least my brain when I'm up here working on it. So I think I'll take that in consideration. And then if obviously if someone's got something else to say and they want to raise their hand and come forth, we can do that. But I don't want the shouting from the audience type of thing. That just wastes everybody's time.
I was wondering also if people been filling those completely, or are they
No.
just giving their name?
No, one guy just put his name and the number, and that's it.
Yeah, and
So you don't get. Some of them are filled out okay. Some of them are just a name and a check mark.
Is there really a need for all that information that's on there? Well, who's using the email address and whatever else is on there anyway?
I can explain why it's added on there is in case somebody comes up and has questions and they didn't feel that their answer was completely answered and they want to be contacted by staff. Then we have it to where we can gather the information and send it to them. That's the sole purpose of that, is just that it's there. It's not a requirement.
You think that people feel obligated to fill all this stuff out?
I think some people might not realize that they could just put their name.
So do we just put the name and the agenda item and put,
You could say optional information below this line.
yeah,
if they
just
want.
put required next to the name and the agenda item number?
I think that might work better for some people who might be intimidated by that form.
I'll explain something, Sunday. It is well known that these speaker request forms are to go to the manager's, commission manager's office. They're not given out to anybody. Just so this commission knows.
Perhaps
and
a
ours.
little note on the bottom there, your information is confidential, just so people feel
That's a good
more
idea.
comfortable.
Something that would help me, if I could know, who are these people? What is their relationship to the property? I mean, the engineer people, they stand up and identify themselves. But the man, was it Sumner or Summer?
Scott Sumner, a lawyer.
Well, he didn't say he was a lawyer representing anybody. He just said and I'm just saying, it would help me to know the relationship. It wasn't until he was done that I even knew that he was in favor of the subdivision. So, I mean, if you could say, I am an attorney representing.
Sure. Yeah, some people do that, some people do not.
Yeah, well, like I said, it would just help me, but.
But that's a question we could ask if we don't feel like they provided.
Yeah, okay.
Commissioner,
Go ahead, PJ.
now that we're going to be looking at updating this, normally agents, landowners, and applicants, we don't require them to fill one out. They're kind of given a pass. Would you like to add that specifically to talk about what the relationship is, or?
Agents, landowners, and who?
Agents, landowners, and applicants. Sometimes they're three different people. They could be the same person sometime.
I don't think so. I think that they get to speak on the item if there's people that are opposed to it and fill out a form and that kind of thing. I don't see any reason to do that.
Yeah, because their names are already on the staff report, so that's why we weren't requiring them to do it.
Right.
I see.
And I think, I get Sandy's point, because I think it makes their comments more relevant when we understand the relationship. But I guess I view that as something that if we want that information, we can just simply ask them. So rather than, make the form a little more complicated.
Sure. No, I'm not asking that the form be complicated, but when we say to them, please state your name when they're at the microphone, if you could also add your relationship to the issue. No big deal.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I know attorneys think everybody knows they are an attorney, but, it's,
That's something that Rich could do when they come forward like that. Please state your name and are you applicant or what? I don't know how you want to word that, but you could ask them.
Well, I can do as Kathy suggested. I can just ask if I'm curious. But like I say, I spent a lot of time trying to figure it out. And if I knew up front,
A lot of times we only know they're landowners if they're not happy with something. Or, you know, neighbors.
yeah, no, I
You know what I'm saying? To distinguish the two or something.
Okay. I'll digest all this. Thanks. Anything else from the membership? Item 27, adjournment. Is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
Motion and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? We're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.